During a high-profile Hybe press conference, Jimin's father storms in and accuses Jungkook of causing his son's depression. What happens next shocks the world. The flash of cameras was relentless, sharp, and blinding. Hybe's conference hall was a maze of voices, questions, and tightly rehearsed statements until everything fell apart. Stop pretending nothing happened. The voice cut through the air like a blade. It wasn't from a reporter. It wasn't from a manager. It was from a man with trembling hands, eyes burning with rage and heartbreak, standing just beyond the second row of seats, flanked by stunned security guards. The entire room went silent. Even the cameras paused, their blinking red lights frozen in disbelief. The man stepped forward, fists clenched. Park Sung-jin, Jimin's father. Everyone here knows the truth. My son is suffering. And you? He pointed directly at Jungkook, who was seated on stage, flanked by other BTS members and executives. You did this to him. The silence that followed was suffocating. Jungkook didn't move. He didn't blink. His breath caught somewhere between his throat and his chest. His hands, resting calmly on the table seconds ago, began to tremble ever so slightly. The conference room turned into a crucible of judgment. Dozens of reporters leaned forward, ready to pounce. The staff, the translators, even the usually composed Bang Si-hyuk looked frozen. No one had prepared for this. Jungkook's lips parted as if to speak, but no sound came out. Jimin was not present that day. He was listed as on personal leave due to health reasons. But now that phrase felt like a curtain hastily drawn to cover a shattered window. Do you know what it's like? Jimin's father continued, voice cracking. To walk in on your son, curled up in his bed, shaking, whispering apologies to someone who doesn't even pick up his calls anymore? Jungkook flinched. The cameras turned. All of them. Some panned in on Jungkook's face, searching for guilt, denial, anything. Others caught the reactions of the remaining BTS members. Taehyung's jaw tightened. RM looked down at his hands. Jin's brow furrowed in disbelief. No one interrupted. Jungkook slowly stood. He didn't say a word. He looked at Jimin's father, eyes wide, unsure if they held more regret or confusion. And then he did something no one expected. He bowed, deeply, completely. For several long seconds, the air inside the hall seemed to collapse. When Jungkook rose, his face had changed. His features were still flawless, but his expression was a battlefield of storms. It wasn't arrogance. It wasn't even shame. It was grief, aged beyond his years. He stepped forward toward the edge of the stage, the cameras following his every move. He opened his mouth again, his voice barely audible. I never meant to hurt him. That was all he managed before a soft scuffle was heard. Jimin's father being escorted out, though his voice echoed faintly through the hallway. Then why did you disappear when he needed you most? The press conference disbanded itself. The staff were overwhelmed. The PR team scrambled, trying to divert attention with statements and scheduled interviews. But it was too late. The story had written itself. And it had already reached the world. Backstage, away from the chaos, Jungkook sat alone in the dim green room. His hands were clasped tightly in his lap. His phone was locked. Dozens of missed calls from the last month, from Jimin, remained unopened. He remembered the last time they were together, weeks before Jimin's sudden break. They had fought. Not over anything monumental. Not at first. But the tension that had built for months, the quiet miscommunications, the hidden tears, everything had erupted in one night that neither of them could take back. You said you understood, Jimin had whispered, voice cracked and tired. But you weren't even trying anymore. And Jungkook, too tired to explain, too proud to beg, had simply said, maybe you're right. Those 4 words had carved a canyon between them. Now, Jungkook sat in silence, hearing nothing but the distant echo of the crowd's disarray behind the walls. The press, the fans, the staff, none of it mattered in that moment. All he could think about was the sound of Jimin's voice that night, the way it shook, the way it begged without ever asking for anything. Did I fail him? He murmured to no one. There was a knock at the door, soft, hesitant. He looked up, expecting perhaps a manager or staff member, but instead, it was Taehyung. His eyes were unreadable, his expression like a mirror of restraint. I tried to call him too, Taehyung said quietly, leaning against the doorframe. He won't pick up. Jungkook looked down at his hands. I don't know what to say if he does. Start with the truth, Taehyung replied. Even if it's ugly. Jungkook didn't answer. His throat ached from holding back too much. But deep down, he knew Taehyung was right. The truth was never clean. It was never pretty. But it was the only way forward. And maybe, just maybe, Jimin was waiting for it. Somewhere, in the silence of his room, behind drawn curtains and unopened texts, maybe he was waiting for the one person he hadn't blocked yet to say something real. That night, Jungkook went home and opened his voice memo app. He didn't trust himself to call. His voice was shaky, but his words were finally clear. Hyung, if you hear this, I don't want to defend myself. I just want to say, I'm sorry for not listening, for walking away when you needed someone to stay. I thought giving you space was love, but maybe you needed more than that. I hope someday I can say this to your face. He paused. And I hope when that day comes, you'll still be there. He hit send. He didn't know if Jimin would listen, but he had to start somewhere. The night after the disastrous press conference unfolded like a fever dream Jungkook couldn't wake from. His name had overtaken every trending list on Korean social media platforms. On Twitter, thousands of hashtags had exploded. Some supported him, most did not. Protect Jimin. Hybe must answer. Where is Jimin? Jungkook apologize. And the most chilling of all, Jimin deserves better. The silence from Hybe was deafening. Their official statement was vague. We are aware of the unexpected incident and are currently assessing the situation internally. But there was no containing the damage. Clips of Jimin's father confronting Jungkook had already been clipped, translated, subtitled, and virally dissected by every major outlet from Dispatch to CNN Entertainment. Journalists were digging into their past, scouring fan cams for tension, analyzing old V-Live clips, and spinning conspiracies out of subtle glances. And the worst part for Jungkook, he hadn't heard from Jimin at all. He sat alone on his rooftop balcony as the wind toyed with the empty teacup beside him. Seoul's lights stretched like a cruel horizon that promised everything except peace. He opened Instagram. Jimin's account had gone dark. All posts archived. His profile photo replaced with a black circle. No bio. Just a username. Like a void. A vibration startled him. A message. Taehyung. Don't go online. Don't read the articles. Come to my place. Now. Jungkook hesitated only for a second. Then he stood. When he arrived at Taehyung's apartment 30 minutes later, the tension was visible even in the way the door opened. Taehyung didn't greet him with his usual smirk or half-hug. He just stepped aside. The TV was on. Muted. The headline read, Exclusive. Psychiatrist close to Jimin speaks out. He felt betrayed by someone he loved deeply. Jungkook stopped in his tracks. Are they really? They're feeding on this, Taehyung interrupted coldly. Hybe's not stopping them. They're letting it play out because they're afraid to take a side. And Jimin? Jungkook's voice cracked. Taehyung didn't answer immediately. He walked into the kitchen, poured 2 glasses of water, and returned with a deliberate calm that felt unnatural on him. He's staying with his aunt, not in the dorms, not with his family, alone. Jungkook's hands clenched. Why didn't you tell me? Because you're the reason he left. The words hit like knives. Jungkook recoiled, visibly shaking. Do you believe I wanted this? It doesn't matter what you wanted, Taehyung snapped. He trusted you. And somewhere along the way, you stopped showing him that he could. Jungkook sank onto the couch, covering his face with both hands. I didn't know he was... No, don't say that. Taehyung's voice trembled now. You knew. We all saw it. You just chose to ignore it because it was easier than admitting how deep you two had gotten. A long silence settled between them, stretching until the city lights flickered through the window. Taehyung finally sat across from him. Do you even remember the night he left? I remember every second of it. Jungkook whispered. Then say it. Jungkook's jaw tightened. He told me he was tired. Not just tired from work or schedules. Tired of pretending he didn't care when I distanced myself. He asked if I still saw him the same way as I used to. I didn't answer. I froze. And he walked out. Taehyung's eyes burned. And that's the night he tried... He stopped himself. Jungkook looked up, breath caught. He tried what? Taehyung bit his lip hard. Never mind. You don't get to know that until you earn it. Jungkook stood pacing now. Don't do this to me. If something happened to him. Why? Taehyung interrupted, voice rising. So you can finally feel something? Because if you had listened when he cried in the dressing room after Osaka, or when he stayed behind alone in Paris, or when he begged you to stop reading comments out loud and laughing, he wouldn't have needed to leave. Jungkook's voice cracked. I thought I was protecting him. No, Jungkook, Taehyung shouted, slamming the glass onto the table. You were protecting yourself. The silence that followed was more violent than the shouting. Jungkook sat back down, this time slower, like the weight of the truth had snapped his spine. I want to see him, he said quietly. He doesn't want to see anyone, Taehyung replied, just as soft. But there's one person he hasn't blocked yet. Jungkook looked up. You. The room filled with static energy. Jungkook's heartbeat pounded in his ears. You want to fix this? Taehyung continued. Don't write a post. Don't film a teary apology. Go to him. Tonight. Before he disappears completely. It was almost 3 a.m. when Jungkook stood outside a modest villa in the outer district of Seoul. He hadn't driven. He had walked the last 15 minutes, unable to bear the stillness of being confined in a car. The front gate was shut. There were no lights on. The world around him was asleep, unaware of the war being fought in his chest. He raised a trembling hand and pressed the intercom. No answer. He tried again. Still silence. Then he stepped back, eyes fixed on the blackened window of the second floor. And then it happened. A curtain shifted. Not fully. Just enough to reveal a silhouette. His heart stopped. It was him. Jimin. Jungkook raised both hands slowly, like surrendering. He didn't speak. He didn't move closer. He just stood there, letting the silence say everything he couldn't. A minute passed. Then 2. The curtain dropped, and the gate opened. Jungkook walked in, each step heavier than the last. Jimin was waiting inside the small living room, wrapped in a gray hoodie that looked 2 sizes too big. His eyes were sunken, but his gaze sharp, controlled. Quiet. Jungkook spoke first. I don't deserve to be here. You don't, Jimin said plainly. But I'm here anyway, Jungkook said. They stared at each other. Jimin crossed his arms. Why now? Because I couldn't breathe after what your father said, Jungkook said. Because I realized I cared more about looking like I had it together than actually being there for you. And because I need you to know that I heard everything, even when I didn't listen. Bye. Jimin's jaw tightened. I was drowning, Jungkook, and I reached for you. I know. You let me fall. I know. I almost didn't come back up. Jungkook stepped closer. And I'll carry that for the rest of my life. But please, don't carry it alone anymore. Jimin turned away, pacing to the window. His voice dropped. The night I left, I took a cab to the bridge. I stood there for an hour, just thinking. No fans, no cameras, just me and you, in my head, over and over. Jungkook felt like vomiting. Why didn't you call me? Jimin turned, eyes glassy. Because you stopped answering even when you did. Those words shattered something in Jungkook. He knelt, right there in the middle of the room. A man brought to his knees not by shame, but by love twisted and left unspoken for too long. I'm not asking you to forgive me, he whispered. I just want to find my way back to the version of us that used to laugh at 2 a.m. and dream of forever. Jimin said nothing for a long time. Then he did something that would echo through the fandom, through their music, through everything that followed. He walked over, sat down across from Jungkook, and said quietly, then start from the beginning. And Jungkook did. He told him everything. The insecurities, the envy, the fear, the love, the guilt. And Jimin listened. The healing wouldn't be immediate, but it had begun. The morning after their confrontation passed without the sun ever truly rising. A dull gray sky blanketed the city as though it had absorbed the heaviness from the night before. In Jimin's aunt's home, the silence between Jungkook and Jimin was no longer an enemy. It had become a delicate space, like the pause between broken piano keys. Fragile, honest, uncertain. They had talked for hours through the night, until their voices gave out, until their eyes burned, until they both realized they had run out of accusations and explanations and were now left with the one thing neither of them had the strength to name: regret. Jungkook sat at the edge of the couch, clasping a mug that had long gone cold. His voice was hoarse, rough, with the ache of unspoken truths. "You don't have to trust me yet," he said slowly, as if weighing each syllable. "But I want to earn it back, even if it takes a year, even if it takes forever." Jimin stood near the window, arms folded, jaw tight. His hoodie still draped him like a shield. He didn't face Jungkook when he spoke. "You think showing up now fixes the year you disappeared from me?" Jungkook lowered his head. "No, but disappearing again would be worse." Jimin finally turned. His eyes were tired but piercing. "Do you even know what you want from me?" "I want..." Jungkook hesitated. "I want you to stop pretending you're okay just because people expect you to be. And I want to stop pretending I don't need you just because I was afraid of what that meant." Jimin's breath caught for a moment. It wasn't love that filled the room. It was something older, something raw, a shared scar that had never healed. The sound of a phone vibrating cut through the room like a sudden gust of wind. Jungkook's phone. He checked the screen. "Hybe. Emergency meeting. All members. 11 a.m. He looked up at Jimin. "They want us all back at the building." Jimin didn't respond immediately. His fingers curled tighter around his sleeve. "Of course they do. They smell blood." "I won't go if you don't," Jungkook said. Jimin gave him a long, unreadable look. "Don't make this about protecting me. That's what started all this." Jungkook opened his mouth, then shut it. He nodded. 2 hours later, they stood outside Hybe headquarters together. Reporters had already gathered. The glass front of the building reflected a crowd of fans with signs that ranged from heartbreakingly supportive to cruelly accusatory. Security was tight, but not tight enough to stop the questions. "Jimin, is it true you were hospitalized for mental health reasons?" "Jungkook, did you leave the group's dorms to avoid him? Are the rumors true about a fight in Tokyo? Are you two still friends?" Neither of them answered. Inside, the atmosphere was even colder. Hybe executives sat at the long boardroom table, flanked by lawyers and communications staff. Bang Si-hyuk himself sat at the head, his usual warm demeanor replaced with something steelier. "Sit," he said quietly. They obeyed. RM was already there, along with Jin, Taehyung, Yoongi, and Hobi. Everyone was stiff, formal. Not even Taehyung looked at them. Jimin's fingers trembled beneath the table. Bang Si-hyuk broke the silence. "What happened at the press conference is unacceptable." Jungkook's voice was calm. "It wasn't staged. It wasn't planned. You know that. That doesn't change the fact that Hybe is under fire. Sponsors are threatening withdrawal. Our upcoming tour may be postponed. Jimin's father's statement has gone viral in 32 countries. He was grieving," Jimin said suddenly, his voice quiet but razor sharp. "He wasn't lying." Bang narrowed his eyes. "And are you confirming what he said?" Jimin glanced at Jungkook. Jungkook looked back, not blinking. "I'm confirming," Jimin said carefully, "that I have been struggling. And Hybe knew it. You sent therapists, but what you didn't send was space." The room shifted uncomfortably. "You made me keep posting, keep smiling, keep lying." "Park Jimin," an executive began. "No," Jimin interrupted. "You don't get to use my full name like you care." Yoongi finally leaned forward. "What's the plan then? Damage control?" Another executive answered. "We're preparing a joint video, both Jimin and Jungkook. A message of unity, of support. We'll script it. Minimal edits. Safe language." Jungkook stood. "Absolutely not. You don't have a choice." "I do. I always do. And I'm not lying to the fans again." The table erupted into low murmurs. Bang held up his hand. "Let him speak." Jungkook looked directly at the team. "I made mistakes, and I'm not going to polish them into PR language. If I speak to the fans, it will be in my own words." Taehyung finally spoke, his voice level. "If you muzzle them, the fandom will know. They're not stupid. They'll feel it." Bang stared at the group, his fingers pressed together. "Fine. You can speak your truth, but understand this. If you go off script and make things worse, there will be consequences. For everyone." After the meeting, the members scattered. The building's tension was unbearable. Jimin found himself walking toward the studio in silence until a familiar voice called after him. "Hyung, wait." Jungkook caught up to him. They stood face to face in the hallway. No fans, no cameras, just the echo of their footsteps and the thrum of too many memories. I meant what I said in there, Jungkook said softly. About speaking honestly. Jimin looked at him for a long moment. Are you ready to tell them everything? Not everything, but enough. Jimin stepped closer. Then say it now, just to me. One more time. Jungkook swallowed hard. His voice was trembling but certain. I love you. Not because I'm supposed to. Not because the fans wanted, but because I never stopped. And I was scared. I was stupid. But I see you now. All of you. Jimin's eyes welled, but no tears fell. He reached out and touched Jungkook's chest with 2 fingers. Then prove it when it matters. That night, BTS went live. It was raw. No filters. No background music. Just Jungkook and Jimin sitting side by side on a simple couch. Hi, Army, Jungkook began, his voice shaking. We didn't plan this. We didn't rehearse it. But we owe you the truth. Jimin looked into the camera. I've been not okay for a while. And I didn't want you to see me that way because I didn't want to disappoint you. But hiding it almost destroyed us, Jungkook added. And almost destroyed what we mean to each other. I was angry, Jimin said. At him, at myself, at everything. But mostly, I was hurting. And I didn't know how to say that without sounding ungrateful. We're not broken, Jungkook said. But we're not perfect either. The live broadcast lasted 17 minutes. It was viewed 48 million times in under 24 hours. Fans cried, commented, trended hashtags of support and understanding. And for the first time in months, Jimin smiled. Not a fake smile. Not one scripted for variety shows or fan meetings. A real, tired, human smile. And Jungkook leaned just slightly toward him. Not to perform, but to stay close to the only thing he had almost lost forever, Jimin. There are moments in life when the public's applause feels louder than the voice in your own head. For Jungkook and Jimin, the morning after the live stream was not a celebration. It was a reckoning. The world didn't explode in flames like they expected. It burned quieter, slower, but deeply. The video had spread like a wound torn open. Across every platform, their honesty echoed. Some fans cried. Others screamed. Some accused them of using vulnerability as a shield. But most simply watched in silence. Because for once, it didn't feel like they were idols. It felt like they were human. At HYBE headquarters, the air was tense. A new meeting was called. This time, it wasn't just the executives. It included keyboard members, investors, and brand liaisons. They weren't interested in healing. They were interested in image. Bang Si-hyuk looked over his glasses with a weary gaze as he addressed Jungkook and Jimin. You caused another wave, he began. But this time, the tide is unpredictable. Jungkook straightened his back. We spoke from the heart. Isn't that what the fans deserve? They don't buy honesty, an investor snapped. They buy fantasy. No, Jimin said, his voice sharp as ice. They buy connection. And connection without truth is just manipulation. Silence followed. Bang inhaled slowly. The issue is not what you said. It's what others will do with it. Media houses are already calling to ask about the relationship statuses you implied. They want a label, said a young PR manager. There is no label, Jimin replied. There never was. There's just the truth. The board members shifted uncomfortably. One of the brand reps stood. She was dressed in a designer suit, her expression cool and surgical. You're jeopardizing campaigns worth millions. Calvin Klein, Dior, Samsung. They're already in talks to reduce your face time in upcoming ads due to this emotional instability narrative. Jungkook stared at her. So, let me get this straight. If I cry in a live stream, I lose a deal. But if I break down off camera, no one cares? That's not what we're saying, the woman replied flatly. No, that's exactly what you're saying, Jimin snapped. You want us glossy, filtered, controlled. That's not life. Bang Si-hyuk raised a hand again. Enough. The room fell silent. I created BTS with a vision. Not to be perfect, but to be brave. And right now, bravery looks like this. So unless you have a better plan than exploiting their silence again, I suggest we pivot, genuinely. There was murmuring, but no one dared challenge him openly. As the meeting adjourned, Jungkook reached for Jimin's wrist lightly, not possessive, just anchoring. "You okay?" he whispered. Jimin gave a dry laugh. "That word doesn't mean anything anymore." Later that day, the next shockwave came. Dispatch published a leaked internal memo. It included old voice notes, apparently between HYBE staff and a mental health consultant, suggesting that Jimin's emotional decline had been noticed months before but buried to protect ongoing tour revenues. The term strategic silence was used 3 times. Fans exploded, not in anger at Jimin or Jungkook, but at HYBE. The hashtag HYBESilenceJimin rocketed to the top of Twitter. Subreddits dissected the power dynamics. Old interviews were clipped where Jimin's eyes looked too empty, his smile too forced. They saw it now. They saw it all. HYBE's walls started to sweat. At midnight, Jungkook received a message. From a private number. It was Jimin's father. "I want to talk." Privately, without cameras, without managers. Jungkook stared at the message for a full minute before responding. "Where?" The answer came quickly. The hospital. When he arrived, the atmosphere wasn't tense. It was heavier, like something sacred was about to break. Jimin's father stood beside a small window in the waiting room, hands behind his back. He didn't greet Jungkook with a smile. He didn't even look at him at first. "I watched your live stream," he said quietly. Jungkook said nothing. "You said you love him?" "I do." "Love isn't just words," the older man muttered. "Love is sitting beside someone when they can't look you in the eye. It's not running when the silence gets loud." "I know that now," Jungkook replied, voice raw. Jimin's father finally turned to him. His eyes were tired, but not angry. Not anymore. "Do you know what it's like to hear your son cry at night and whisper your name? Not mine, yours." Jungkook's knees almost gave out. "I failed him as a father in some ways," the man continued, "because I didn't teach him that loving someone doesn't mean breaking for them. I never meant to break him," Jungkook whispered. "I believe you," the father said. "But now I need to know if you're willing to help him rebuild." Jungkook stepped forward. No hesitation. "I won't leave again. Not until he tells me to." The man studied him, then nodded once. "Good. Because there's something you should know." "What?" "He's going public." "What do you mean?" "He's planning to release his private journals, the ones he wrote when he was at his lowest. He says the world needs to hear the truth, not from press releases, not from managers, from his own words." Jungkook's throat tightened. That could destroy him, or it could free him. The next week was war. HYBE tried to stop the release. They offered money, counselors, contracts. Jimin refused. In a press conference that shocked everyone, Jimin stood alone on stage. No stylists, no flashy lights, just him, a microphone, and his heart on his sleeve. He read excerpts. "I wrote this the day I thought about disappearing. It says, the person I love the most doesn't look at me the same anymore. Maybe it's because I changed. Maybe it's because he changed. But love should never feel like silence." He paused, breathing heavily. "Another day I wrote, I want to scream, but I don't know if anyone would listen." He looked up, straight into the camera lens. "Are you listening now?" The room erupted, not in claps, not in applause, but in stillness, a collective heartbreak, a reckoning. Jungkook watched from the back. Tears rolled freely. When Jimin stepped off stage, he didn't expect anything. No forgiveness, no praise, but what he got instead was Jungkook, waiting, arms open, and this time, Jimin walked into them. No fear, no shame, just 2 boys who once forgot how to love each other and who were learning again, word by trembling word. The weight of Jimin's public journal reading rippled across the industry like an earthquake through glass towers. Its epicenter was Seoul, but its tremors were global. Within 24 hours, dozens of articles had erupted across every major entertainment outlet, dissecting his phrases, comparing timelines, and questioning HYBE's ethics with a new sense of urgency. Fans weren't just sympathetic now, they were outraged, protective, and vocal. But while the world debated, behind closed doors, the real war had only just begun. At HYBE headquarters, the atmosphere turned frigid. A private crisis meeting was convened not with the artists, but with the highest-level executives, attorneys, and branding strategists. The leaked memo scandal had already dented their reputation, but Jimin's journal entries, they tore the curtain off entirely. "This is no longer a PR problem," one executive said with barely concealed panic. "This is structural exposure. There are legal implications. Shareholder trust is plummeting." Another chimed in, "We need control back. Complete control." Bang Si-hyuk, who had sat quiet up until this point, finally leaned forward. His voice was composed, but cold. "Damage control doesn't mean silencing them. That only confirms everything they've said. It means redirecting the narrative." "How?" someone snapped. Bang's fingers tapped rhythmically on the glass table. "We turn them into the heroes of their own downfall. If they want to show scars, we let them. But we make sure the light always points toward redemption." A PR strategist nodded slowly. "We craft a comeback arc, an emotional redemption story. The world loves those. Two fractured brothers. Healing, growth, reconnection." "Exactly," Bang replied. "And we build it around Jungkook." The room quieted. One of the legal advisors raised an eyebrow. "Why him?" "Because, despite everything," Bang answered, "he never tried to be the victim. People see him as strong. If he breaks down publicly now, it will hit harder than anything we could write. It will make people believe he's grown, that he understands." "And Jimin?" "We follow his lead. Let him speak. Let him own the pain, but push him subtly toward the brand's future." And just like that, a new machine was set into motion. Meanwhile, across town, Jungkook was anything but composed. He sat on the balcony of his private studio, legs pulled to his chest, phone in one hand, shaking cigarette in the other. He hadn't smoked in years. He never liked it. But something about the bitterness of the air felt familiar tonight. Taehyung sat beside him, watching the quiet unravel. "You haven't said a word since the press conference." "There's nothing left to say," Jungkook murmured. "That's not true," Taehyung said. "There's just things you're still too scared to say out loud." Jungkook's eyes were hollow. "Did I ever tell you what I said to him the night he walked out?" "No." Jungkook stared out at the city lights. He was crying. His hands were shaking. He asked me why I had become so cold, and I told him I needed space. Taehyung remained silent. "And then," Jungkook continued, voice barely audible, he said, "If space means I can't even reach you when I'm drowning, then maybe this isn't love anymore." And I didn't stop him from leaving. "You were trying to protect him," Taehyung offered gently. "No," Jungkook said, shaking his head. "I was protecting myself." Inside the studio, Jimin stood silently by the door. He had heard everything, his presence unnoticed, his breath shallow. He stepped outside. "I wasn't asking you to save me," he said. "I was asking you not to let go." Jungkook turned slowly, eyes widening. "Hyung, I don't want a redemption arc," Jimin said, stepping forward. "I don't want the company scripting apologies and growth statements. I want the truth, from you, from us, without edits." Jungkook stood, his cigarette forgotten. "Then ask me anything." Jimin's eyes didn't waver. "Did you stop loving me?" The silence between them was so thick it felt like breathing through water. "No," Jungkook whispered. "But I didn't know how to love you without losing parts of myself, and that scared me." Jimin exhaled. "I would have shared that space with you. You never had to choose between your identity and your heart." "I didn't know how," Jungkook replied. "Then learn," Jimin said. "Because I'm done being a secret. I'm done being your guilt." The words hit like thunder. Later that night, a call came from Bang Si-hyuk. "I want to meet," he said bluntly. "Just you. No cameras." Jungkook agreed. The meeting was set at a quiet rooftop lounge overlooking the Han River. Bang arrived alone, coat flapping in the wind, eyes tired but focused. "You've grown," he said, sitting down. Jungkook said nothing. Bang leaned forward. "I know you think HYBE used you. Maybe we did. Maybe we all use each other in this industry. But I also saw a boy once who stood on a rooftop and said he'd give everything for this group. I need to know if that boy is still in there." Jungkook looked out over the city. "He is. But he's not blind anymore." Bang nodded slowly. "I want to offer you something." "What?" "Creative control. For the next comeback." Jungkook blinked. You write the narrative. You design the arc. I'll get the board to agree. Why now? Because I'd rather you be the storm than the silence. And because you and Jimin aren't just idols anymore. You're symbols. And symbols change the world. Jungkook didn't agree right away, he thought, deeply. Then he asked one question. Do I get to tell the truth? Bang met his eyes. If it's sellable? Jungkook smiled coldly. Then maybe it's time we stop selling pain like perfume. The following week, Jungkook and Jimin entered the studio. Together. No managers, no producers, just them. They didn't talk about music at first. They just sat, remembered, laughed, cried. And then Jimin played a note. Just one. It broke Jungkook open, and they wrote their first song together in over a year. It wasn't a love song. It was a confession. It was imperfect, raw, wounded, beautiful. And when they finished the demo, Jungkook turned to Jimin. Should we let them hear it? Jimin smiled. No, not yet. Why? Because for once, Jimin said, eyes soft, I want something that's just ours. And Jungkook nodded. Because this time, love didn't need an audience. It just needed honesty. The studio was still humming with quiet vibrations from the last chord when the door burst open, not with a crash, but the kind of sharp, official knock that cuts through private air like a blade. Jimin stood abruptly. Jungkook turned, his expression flickering. It wasn't a staff member or even a manager. It was legal. Two HYBE compliance officers, sharply dressed. Their faces blank with the polish of corporate detachment. We need to speak with Jungkook, one of them said, without so much as a greeting. Privately. Jimin's eyes narrowed. You can speak in front of me. I'm afraid this isn't optional, the woman said, tone clipped. Jungkook held up a hand toward Jimin. It's fine. I'll go. But something in his voice trembled. He felt it too. This wasn't routine. They took him to the upper floor conference room. A long, sterile space with no windows, no warmth. Bang Si-hyuk was already seated at the far end, flanked by two unfamiliar faces. Older men in suits. They didn't introduce themselves. Jungkook sat, throat tightening. Bang Si-hyuk tapped his fingers. You've been contacted by Rolling Stone Korea? Jungkook hesitated. Yes. They wanted to interview me about the live stream. I declined. That's not what they're reporting. Jungkook's pulse quickened. What do you mean? One of the suits slid a tablet across the table. On the screen was a draft of an unreleased article titled BTS Rift, Unfiltered Voice Notes Suggest Deeper Divide Between Jimin and Jungkook. Jungkook's eyes scanned the lines. His mouth went dry. There were transcripts of voice notes, private ones, old. Some from when he had fought with Jimin during tour, some from weeks after they stopped talking. None of it painted him as abusive, but it painted him as cold, dismissive, distant. This is illegal, Jungkook said, pushing the tablet back. They don't have the right to publish private audio. They're claiming the voice notes were shared by someone inside the company, an anonymous source. Jungkook froze. And this is where things get delicate, Bang continued, lacing his hands. We can bury it. File a suppression claim. Threaten legal consequences. Then do it, Jungkook snapped. The second executive leaned forward. We will, but only if you cooperate. Jungkook frowned. What does that mean? You sign a prepared joint statement. You reaffirm support for HYBE's mental health efforts. You deny that Jimin was ever silenced. You frame your rift as miscommunication, nothing more. Jungkook stood. His chair scraped against the floor like a protest. I won't lie. Not again. If you don't, the man replied. We can't protect you from what's coming next. Bang sighed, looking more exhausted than ever. We've already lost $500 million in sponsorships. If the group fractures now, the group already fractured. Jungkook interrupted. You just didn't hear the snap. He walked out without waiting for permission. Back downstairs, Jimin was pacing the hallway. The second he saw Jungkook's face, he knew something had shifted. They're trying to silence us again, aren't they? Jungkook nodded. And they're blaming each other for the leak. Jimin clenched his fists. They're trying to keep us marketable. They're trying to keep us sellable, Jungkook corrected. It's different. They returned to the studio and shut the door. For the next 2 hours, they sat in silence, listening to their own voice memos, matching timestamps, piecing together the leak. The betrayal wasn't just emotional now, it was strategic, coordinated. Someone inside HYBE had weaponized their grief. Then the second betrayal came. Yoongi called, voice trembling. "You guys need to see something," he said. He sent a link, a new video, a cut-up edit of Jimin's journal reading, overlaid with slow music and emotional imagery packaged like a tribute. But at the bottom corner, the logo was clear. Hybe presents. "They're monetizing it," Jungkook whispered. Jimin said nothing. He just stared. The entire video twisted his words into a redemption arc, complete with pre-written captions like, "His struggle, his strength, our star." "No one asked me," Jimin said softly. The next day, Jimin called a private press briefing. He didn't tell Hybe. He didn't invite media that played nice. He went live on his own platform. When the camera turned on, it wasn't Jimin the idol. It was Park Jimin, the young man who once cried alone in Osaka. The boy who had survived without ever being asked what he wanted. "I need to tell you something," he said to the camera. His voice was steady, but his fingers trembled. "You've seen my pain. You've heard it. But what you haven't seen is how it was packaged, curated, sold." He paused. "I'm not your mascot for healing. I'm not a vessel for tragedy so brands can sell more perfume. I'm a human being, and so is Jungkook." He took a breath. "There were days when I hated him, truly. Days I blamed him for everything. But there were more days where I just wanted him to look me in the eye and say, 'I see you.'" He looked down, then looked back up. He did, eventually. And not because he was forced to, but because he cared. Across the city, Jungkook was watching the stream from a parked car. Alone. No staff. No lawyers. Tears slid down his cheeks silently. Then Jimin said the thing no one expected. "And I love him. Not as a brand, not as a ship, as a person. A flawed, complicated, beautiful person." The world broke open. Within minutes, media exploded. "Jungkook is real" trended worldwide. But this wasn't about fan theories or shipping wars anymore. It was about reclaiming identity. About saying, "You don't own our pain." That night, Hybe called an emergency board meeting. It ended in chaos. Executives shouting, staff resigning, sponsors freezing contracts. And in the center of it all, Bang Si-hyuk watched quietly, knowing something had irreversibly shifted. And far away, in a tiny rented apartment, Jimin and Jungkook sat on the floor. No stage lights, no filters, just them. When Jungkook walked into their office with a flash drive and a trembling heart, they just nodded. "We'll protect it with everything," the woman said. "This will be the most important book we ever print." And it was. 3 months later, Between the Beats was released. Authored by Park Jimin and Jeon Jungkook. It wasn't a memoir. It wasn't a tell-all. It was a compilation of letters, diary entries, late-night texts that were never sent, pages written in grief and silence and desperate hope. It included photographs, scribbles, drawings, smudged lyrics, unsent apologies. The dedication on the first page simply read, "To the version of ourselves that almost didn't survive." The reaction was nuclear. Some fans cried for hours. Others tattooed lines from the book on their skin. Some called it a betrayal. A few called it liberation, but no one ignored it. Hybe issued a public disavowal, a carefully worded statement about unauthorized use of proprietary content and legal review pending. But they had already lost, because the world had seen what they tried to hide. The book hit #1 on global charts in less than 12 hours. And in the middle of it all, Jimin sat on his balcony, wrapped in a hoodie too big for him, watching the sunrise, the book in his lap. Jungkook walked out, 2 mugs in hand. "Tea," he said. "No coffee. I know how you get." Jimin smirked. "You're lucky I still love you." Jungkook sat beside him. "I know." They watched the sky turn pink. Jimin spoke first. "Did you ever think it'd end up like this?" "Which part?" "Us, here, free." Jungkook took a long breath. "No, I thought I'd lose you." "You almost did. I still have nightmares about it." Jimin leaned his head on his shoulder. "I still have dreams where you never looked back." Jungkook closed his eyes. "I'll never stop looking back," he whispered. Their phones buzzed. Messages from their lawyers, from fans, from Taehyung. Jungkook ignored them all. Instead, he pulled a small notebook from his hoodie pocket. "I wrote something." Jimin blinked. "Now you're the one journaling." Jungkook shrugged. You're a bad influence. He opened the page and read, they told us to be perfect. We chose to be real. They sold our pain. We made it art. They scripted us. We ripped it up. They left us behind. But we found each other. Jimin was quiet. Then he whispered, add one more line. Jungkook handed him the pen. And Jimin wrote, slowly. And we are just getting started. And for the first time in forever, they weren't idols. They weren't rumors. They weren't hashtags. They were just two boys on a balcony, breathing, living, and finally, free. The peace didn't last. It never does. It had been almost 2 weeks since Between the Beats was released, and in that time, Jungkook and Jimin had experienced something they hadn't felt in years control. Their book had dominated international charts. Media houses were dissecting it line by line. Mental health advocates were calling it historic. And fans, true fans, were reaching out in millions. Letters, emails, voice notes. People weren't just consuming it. They were healing with it. But power, when reclaimed, always draws new enemies. On the 12th day, Jimin received a call from his older brother. He rarely called, especially not crying. They're coming after Dad, he said, voice cracking. Jimin sat upright in bed, heart in his throat. Jungkook stirred beside him. What do you mean? There's a warrant. Financial fraud. Allegations of embezzlement. The company he worked with is claiming he diverted funds through you, through BTS, through the fan donations. The legal documents say it started right after you went public. Jimin couldn't speak. He felt the world tilt. Jungkook sat up, eyes instantly sharp. What is it? Jimin lowered the phone slowly, hands trembling. They're dragging my father into this. The news broke later that day. Every tabloid, every site, every platform exploded with the same headline. Park Jimin's father under investigation for fraud connected to BTS charity funds. It was a lie, a brutal, constructed, precision-engineered lie. But it didn't matter. People believe what they want to believe. HYBE made no official statement. But behind the scenes, they pushed the narrative hard. Anonymous staffers leaked fake donation receipts. Internal emails were leaked, showing concern over financial mismanagement. Twitter bots began flooding hashtags. Jimin scandal. Book of lies. Jungkook manipulation. By nightfall, it wasn't just Jimin being called a fraud. Jungkook was being labeled an accomplice. Fans were arguing, dividing, threatening, posting clips out of context. Some burned their copies of the book and posted it on TikTok. Others cried into the pages like it was gospel. Jimin hadn't spoken in hours. He sat on the edge of the bed, back hunched, staring at the floor. Jungkook approached cautiously. Talk to me. Jimin didn't move. I need you to say something, scream, cry, break a plate, anything. Jimin finally looked up. His voice was hollow. They're not coming for me anymore. They're going for the people I love. That's always been their move, Jungkook said. Guilt by association. They think I'll fold, Jimin whispered. They think I'll beg them to stop. Jungkook sat beside him. Are they wrong? Jimin turned to face him. They don't know who I am anymore. The next morning, Jimin walked into the Seoul Metropolitan Police Department with his father. Voluntarily. The press was outside in a frenzy. Cameras flashed like lightning. Reporters screamed questions. Jimin didn't flinch. He held his father's hand. Park Sung-jin looked frail, overwhelmed, but he stood tall. We have nothing to hide, he told the reporters. Inside, the questioning lasted 6 hours. No evidence was found. No credible trail. Just paperwork and rumors and inconsistencies so obvious it was embarrassing. But that wasn't the point. The point was humiliation. Jimin left the building to a barrage of microphones. He looked straight into the nearest camera. Stop using my father to punish me. Come for me if you have something. If not, shut up. That clip alone was viewed 27 million times in a day. Jungkook, meanwhile, had gone silent publicly. But he wasn't idle. He was building something. With taehyung, Yoongi, and a small group of loyal creatives, he began planning an independent performance, an unsanctioned live show. No HYBE logos, no sponsors, no rules. It would be the first performance of songs from the book. Their words, their music, their pain. They rented a small theater in Busan, 300 seats, no promotions, Only one post on social media with a black and white image that read, "If you see this, you're meant to be here." Every ticket sold in under 4 minutes. Hybe responded swiftly. Cease and desist letters, threats, warnings to the theater, even calls to city officials. They tried everything. Nothing worked. On the night of the show, Jimin stood backstage in an oversized shirt, hands clammy, throat dry. He peeked through the curtain and saw not screaming fans, but quiet ones. People crying already. People holding journals, small candles, origami notes. He turned to Jungkook. "Are we doing the right thing?" Jungkook stepped close, forehead touching his. "If truth costs us everything, then yes, it's still worth it." They opened the show with silence. No lights, no music, just them on stage, sitting. Then Jungkook began reading. A letter. One Jimin had written to him in 2021 but never sent. It was raw, devastating. It ended with, "I don't know if you love me anymore, but I still find pieces of you in every breath I take," Jimin cried. In front of everyone. Then he stood, took the mic, and sang. The first song wasn't polished. His voice cracked, but no one cared. The audience stood and cried with him. Then Jungkook joined him. Then Taehyung. Then Yoongi from the shadows, playing piano. It wasn't a concert. It was a resurrection. They called the show Unwritten. The world called it Rebellion. Hybe filed a lawsuit the next day for breach of contract, unauthorized performance, defamation, exploitation of confidential content. Jungkook and Jimin didn't blink. They countersued with everything. Emails, memos, voice notes, NDAs, therapist statements, screenshots. It became the biggest entertainment legal case in South Korea in a decade. And through it all, they stayed side by side. Not to prove a point, but because they finally understood something neither of them had words for before. Love is not survival. It's defiance. It's saying, "I choose you even when the world doesn't." And they did. Every single day. Together. There are wars that are fought with bombs, and there are wars fought with silence. But the most brutal are the ones fought in courtrooms under fluorescent lights, in front of strangers wearing robes, in rooms that smell like old paper and expensive fear. This was that kind of war. The courtroom was ice, not in temperature, but in presence. Press photographers weren't allowed in, but that didn't stop the world from watching. It was streamed. It was tweeted. It was twisted before a single sentence had even been spoken under oath. Jungkook sat on the left side of the room, flanked by 2 lawyers who were loyal to him, not the machine. Jimin sat beside him, a ring on his finger, not for display, not for fashion, but for grounding. His thumb kept grazing it whenever the air grew too thin. Across from them, Hybe's legal team looked like an army. Suits, folders, contracts, stiff smiles, apologies preloaded and ready to fire. This wasn't about justice. This was about reclaiming a narrative. The judge called for quiet. Opening statements began.